This is the key to section 7.3 part C. All right, now in each of these three cases right here, these three problems, you're going to write equivalent fractions. So basically you want to know 2x divided by 5y is equivalent to what fraction that has this denominator. Now, keep in mind that 2x divided by 5y is equivalent to an infinite number of rational expressions. But we're interested in the rational expression that has this denominator. Alright, so basically you need to ask yourself, what do I need to multiply 5y by to get this denominator? Okay, so the first one is easy in terms of 5 times what is 20. So I need to multiply 5 by 4 to get 20. So I know I need to have a 4. Alright, now y times what will give me y squared? Well, we know that y times y will give you y squared. And then I need an x squared, so 5y times 4y x squared will give me 20x squared y squared. So always check yourself. 4 times 5 is 20, y times y is y squared, and then x squared. Now what I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. You got to keep it equivalent. So what I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. So 4 times 2 is 8, so I'll get an 8 here. X squared times x, so remember you multiply like bases, you add those exponents. 2 plus 1 is 3, so I get x cubed, and then y. So that's your answer. So the numerator is going to be 8x cubed y. Alright, now what you're going to need to do here is factor this denominator. So you need to factor that denominator. So everything we've done involving rational expressions you had to factor. So I can factor out a 5 and I'm left with 3y plus 2. So this is the fraction that I'm given. I want to write an equivalent fraction for this that has this denominator. So I need to figure out what do I need to multiply 3y plus 2 by to get 5 times 3y plus 2. So let's see about what we need. I already have the 3y plus 2, so I need a 5. So if you got to cover things up, cover things up. So you need a 5. So I've got to multiply this denominator by 5. See, now that looks like this. But what I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. So 5 times 11y is 55y. So that's this. Okay, the next one, these are already in factors, so these are already factored, but this is not. So this right here is the difference of two squares. So I can factor this as x minus 5 times x plus 5. Now you got to ask yourself, what do I need to multiply this by to get these three factors? So if you look at this, I already have, to get this right here, I already have the x minus 5 and I already have the x plus 5. So in terms of what I have to get this, these are the two I have. So I'm missing the x minus 3. So what you're going to do is multiply this denominator by x minus 3. But what you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. Okay? Alright, now go ahead and multiply this out, distribute. So when we get to another section, you're going to want to distribute at some point. Okay, so I'm going to get 3 times x is 3x, and then 3 times 3 is 9. So I get 3x minus 9. So that's your numerator, 3x minus 9. Okay, so now here you want to add or subtract. You want to simplify all answers. Okay, so in this particular case, you're subtracting two rational expressions that already have the same denominator. So you're going to write this as one fraction. So my one fraction is going to be, with this denominator, n squared minus 8n plus 12. Now be careful with the numerator because you are subtracting something that's not a monomial. So you're subtracting a binomial, so you got to be careful. So you're going to have 2n minus 3. Remember, every term up here is being subtracted. And sometimes it's a good idea just to go ahead and put that in parentheses. So you're subtracting this whole numerator. So n minus 1. All right, now to get rid of the parentheses by distributing this negative 1, I'm going to get 2n minus 3 minus n plus 1. So negative 1 times n is a negative n. Negative 1, that's when it's stupid 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1. All over n squared minus 8n plus 12. Combining like terms, 2n minus n is n. A negative 3 and a positive 1 is a negative 2 over. Okay, now here's where at some point you want to factor this denominator, because what might happen is that when you factor this denominator, you may be able to reduce. So always factor completely at some point. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to get, looks like I'm going to get n minus 6 times n minus 2. And then there you go. So I can reduce the n minus 2's. Remember, when you reduce, you're left with factors of 1. And so the answer is going to be 1 over n minus 6. So 1 divided by n minus 6. Okay, over here, again, you're adding two fractions with that same denominator. Now this one was a subtraction, so you had to be a little bit careful. Notice the parentheses I put this numerator in. Here, since this is addition, it's going to make it fairly simple. You're just going to do this. You're going to say 3, the first numerator, 3k minus 2, is being added to the second numerator, just like that. No parentheses necessary. All divided by 3k squared minus 19k plus 6. Combining like terms, I'm going to get 3k minus 1. A negative 2 and a positive 1 is a negative 1. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and factor this denominator. So just in case, I can factor some factors out. I can reduce some factors out. Okay, so it looks like this is going to be 3k. I'm going to need 6 and 1. So the 6 is going to go here. The 1's going to go here. And the last sign's positive, means these signs in here have to be the same, and they're going to be this middle, the sign of the middle term. So you're going to get this. And always check yourself. 3k times k is 3k squared. A negative 1 times a negative 6 is a positive 6. The outer is a negative 18k. The inner is a negative 1k. And when I add them up, I get a negative 19k. And then notice what happens when I reduce the 1s, the 3k minus 1s divide out, so I'm left with factors of 1. So the answer is going to be 1 divided by k minus 6. All right, number 6. Again, notice the denominators are the same. This time you're subtracting again, so remember, put this in parentheses. So I'm going to get 5n plus 5 in the denominator, and the numerator we're going to have 2n minus, in parentheses, n minus 1. Okay, now distribute, get rid of the parentheses. I'm going to get 2n minus n plus 1, and I'm going to go ahead at this point and factor out a 5. So it'll be 5 times n plus 1. Combining like terms in the numerator, 2n minus n is n, so I get n plus 1 divided by 5 times n plus 1, and then reducing, the n plus 1's divide out, and you get an answer of 1 divided by 5. Okay, over here, my denominators are the same, so I'm just going to rewrite it as one fraction, and I could have factored out the 2 at this point. So I'm going to get 2x minus 1. Let's go ahead and factor the denominator. So we have 2x minus 1 divided by 2 times 2x minus 1. And again, I can reduce. The 2x's minus 1's divide out, and you're left with 1 divided by 2. 1 divided by 2. All right, now the next one. Again, you're subtracting. The denominators are already the same. So you can write it as one fraction. And then be careful with the numerator. You have x cubed minus 3 minus, in parentheses, 7x cubed minus 3. Now getting rid of the parentheses, you're going to distribute. And so when you distribute, you're going to get x cubed minus 3 minus 7x cubed and then subtracting a negative 1 times a negative 3 is a positive 3, all divided by 2x to the fourth. Combining like terms in the numerator, x cubed minus 7x cubed is a negative 6x cubed, a negative 3 and a positive 3 is 0. So all I have left in that numerator when I combine like terms is a negative 6x cubed, and all that's being divided by 2x to the fourth. Alright, now let's reduce. So 2 goes into 2 one time, and 2 goes into a negative 6, negative 3 times. And for the x's, for the factors of x, I have 3 factors of x in this numerator. I have 4 in here, so I can reduce these 3 into here. So 3 x cubed into x cubed is 1. And then I had 4 here. I'm reducing 3 of them, so you're left with just 1. And so the answer is going to be negative 3. Negative 3 divided by 1 times x, which is x. So negative 3 divided by x. Okay, so that's going to take care of the key to this worksheet.